Listen, Lonzo Ball, ZO2, the Chino Hills prodigy, is out here dominating already in training camp. He is making his presence felt on this veteran-led basketball team. I believe that the Cleveland Cavaliers, anything less than the conference finals, is going to be just disastrous. Lonzo Ball is being spoken very highly by, obviously, Coach Kenny Atkinson and superstar guard Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is on record of saying that Lonzo Ball is out here in training camp playing like he's in Chino Hills with all of these passes flying all over the floor. You know what I'm talking about. Lonzo Ball is back. He's rejuvenated. We all know health is just the only question here with Lonzo Ball. If Lonzo Ball didn't get injured, we know that he was going to be one of those guards that, we haven't seen in some time. Lonzo Ball, man, is the truth, man. He's turning a lot of heads in training camp, and I think that he's going to provide a good balance for this guard play. That's what I believe is the problem with Cleveland. Obviously Donovan Mitchell, and obviously the other guard, Garland, that's not a match made in heaven. Lonzo Ball could make a little bit of sense. A lot of things. You look back to even Chicago, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, they wasn't a match made in heaven, but with Lonzo, they was flirting with the #1 seed. You remove Lonzo, they fighting to get into the postseason. Now you see what's going on in Sacramento. It's not a match made in heaven either. Now back to, what's going on with Lonzo. Kenny Atkinson, I think this is going to be, something special for him, getting Lonzo Ball. He's really just going to drop out the sky for this team, man. Kenny Atkinson spoke about Lonzo's defense, picking players up, setting screens for Evan Mobley. We get so caught up in what Lonzo is going to be able to do for the guards, for the Cavaliers. We forget to mention what he's going to provide for, Mobley and, Allen and all of these other players, even the shooters for this team. Lonzo is going to be able to find these guys in different spots, that they are not accustomed to even being found in. We are talking about a once-in-a-generation point guard, ladies and gentlemen. Lonzo is a throwback. We talk a lot about these guards today. These are scoring guards. They want to put up 30. They want to do this. Lonzo Ball is here to win. Everything Lonzo Ball does on the floor is going to be towards winning. He's not out there to be the #1 option, but there's going to be times where he's going to be the most reliable option on that floor, where you're going to want to kick it to Lonzo for that 3. You're going to want to give it to Lonzo. There's going to be times in the fourth quarter for the Cleveland Cavaliers where you are going to be an absolute fool if Lonzo does not have the basketball in his hands, because we already seen what happened with Cleveland as, in the clutch, everything just goes haywire. This is similar to what happened with Dame and Milwaukee, even though we didn't really get a chance to see that. Giannis having trouble in the clutch. He's not able to hit free throws. He's just, like I said, it seemed like the last seconds is always just, oh my gosh, we got to figure something out. And Damian Lillard and company, they was supposed to take that load off of Giannis. I believe that Lonzo Ball is going to be able to take that load off of all of these players, because it seems like in the fourth quarter, everybody gets a little tight, including Mitchell. I think that Mitchell may be probably the best out of all of them in the clutch, but he's not the way you want him to be. Lonzo is going to be able to relieve some stress off of him by bringing the ball up the floor at times, maybe even finding Mitchell, maybe taking Mitchell off ball where he's not on the ball all the time. So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of different things that Lonzo is going to be able to do for Mitchell specifically, because he's had a lot of workload on him, and it wouldn't be long before Mitchell, I seen him thinking about moving on, because you got to think Donovan Mitchell was supposed to be with the New York Knicks. It was talks about that. He never really blatantly came out and said, I want New York. You know, he just wanted out of Utah. You know, that's what ended him up in Cleveland. But then you see what's going on with New York. They was knocking on the door of the NBA Finals last year. You know, and if you looking at Cleveland, who's your threat? You know, we all know the Cavaliers. They are assembled to get to the promised land. You know, they have great seasons every year. You know, their records are high, you know, but we know it's playoffs or nothing when it comes to Cleveland. Are you better than the New York Knicks? You know, especially right now in this Eastern Conference where it looks kind of, I wouldn't say wide open, but you know who's going to be the threats at the top. You know, obviously New York, Cleveland. I think that they are potentially on a collision course for the conference finals. You know, especially with the way it looks like everybody else is looking out there. I don't really see maybe Milwaukee if they could get it together. They did bring in Turner. So I think that those are the top three teams out east, in my humble opinion: Cleveland, New York, and Milwaukee. You know, I think as long as they got Giannis, they're going to be a wild card. So can Cleveland beat Milwaukee? You know, that's a tough question. You know, I think that's a flip of the coin. In my humble opinion, I think Cleveland is hanging around, like I said, they're top three. Where in that three, I don't know. But I am going to give the edge to the New York Knicks, you know, in the Eastern Conference, just off the strength of them being there last year against the Indiana Pacers. You know, they was knocking on the door. They blew game one. They blew a couple of games. You know, if you look at New York, if they would have won this game, won the fix there, got a steal here, we maybe talking a whole nother situation. And they probably would have they would have probably been able to compete better against OKC. You know, in my humble opinion, I think they probably would have beat Oklahoma City. You know, but it is what it is at the end of the day. You know, shout out to the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I want to see how it shakes out. We ain't nothing but a couple days away, y'all. You know, the Cleveland Cavaliers will be playing soon. They're a long ways away from LeBron James. You know, obviously, Dan Gilbert. I don't know Dan Gilbert personally, but I do know for a fact that he would love to win an NBA title without LeBron James. You know, and it's so ironic that the first preseason game happens to be against Lonzo's former team in the Chicago Bulls, where he's going to be taking a trip to Chicago. They play a home and away, you know, Tuesday against Chicago, and then they play again that Thursday in Chicago. So, you know, quick turnaround, you know, for them. And we are going to see, you know, firsthand, you know, game one, Cleveland versus New York. Let me tell you something right now. We will have coverage for you, you know, so you do not want to miss a second of that game on the 22nd, the Knicks versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. I believe that you are going to get a barometer of where these teams are and what Lonzo is going to be able to do. I think Lonzo could help out in basically helping out with Brunson, because I think the rest of these guys are going to have a hard time. Lonzo could pick guys up, you know, 94 feet, this, that, and the third. So it's going to be interesting, y'all. You know, we will have coverage for you. LaMelo and Lonzo coverage on the 22nd. Brooklyn, you know, New York is going down. It's Flight Sports TV. Peace and love.